Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the hopeful elect of Israel, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian, and Haitians. Gotta give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, the Most High, the Heavenly Father. His Hebrew name is Yahweh, not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Most High, not Lord, not Yah, not Jah, not Ahia. It's Yahweh. His only begotten Son name is Yahweh Shai, not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Serapis Christus, not Yeshaya, not Yehoshua, not Yeshua. It's Yahweh Shai. Gotta give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rikah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well. In a sincere salutation to all the oxygen pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four ends of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akwafu who are listening and learning, the few sisters who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you another lesson in true facts, faith, and edification, another daily edification. Lord willing be edifying. And this is for educational purposes only. This is not for monetary gain, and I do not own no copyright to these videos. This is for educational purposes only. And the title of this lesson is From Seneca to Central Park. Lord's witness be edifying.
We're in Central Park, surrounded by beautiful old trees, by lawns, playgrounds, rock outcroppings of Manhattan schist, a reminder of the glacier that once towered over this area. All landmarks that New Yorkers know well. What is less known is that just below our feet are the traces of Seneca Village.
Seneca Village was an African-American and Irish community that was founded in the mid-1820s, and it continued to exist until the park was created in the 1850s. Everybody was evicted from their homes in Seneca Village in 1857.
Which is why very few people know about its existence now in the 21st century.
We've been working on a project to discover the history of Seneca Village and to give Seneca Village its place in history, which has been almost forgotten.
Seneca Village is especially important when you consider the place of African Americans in New York's early history, going all the way back to the Dutch settlement, but also as the English took over and in the post-revolutionary era.
I think a lot of us assume that the African American presence began with the Great Migration in the early 20th century. However, the first African Americans arrived here in the mid-1620s with the Dutch colonists, and African Americans have had a strong presence ever since.
Many people forget that there was slavery here, that much of New York was built with enslaved labor.
We had slavery here in New York until 1827, when emancipation finally was completed.
And in fact, sadly, slavery continued in New York until 1841.
After 1827, when emancipation was completed for New Yorkers, it was still possible, if you were a slave owner from out of state, to bring your slaves as property into the state until 1841.
New York, because it became the financial center of the United States, had important financial ties to the South and to slavery, and so much of the wealth that came into New York was derived from slave labor.
So many of the merchants in New York City depended on crops that were grown in the South, cotton in other words, to export to England for the mills.
Which makes it all the more important to retrieve the history of African Americans in New York City.
Now this is, I came across these clips, these videos, just looking up different things, man. And it was the spirit, because I never seen this. I never seen this in my life, man. This is very spiritual, man. And the Lord said in Luke 8:17, the things that was hid shall be manifest, made known, and come abroad, man. So this is just some more history about you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, you West Indian and Haitians, man. That has been uncovered from centuries ago, man.
realize that it's something that's deeply embedded in the city's history.
But not that deeply embedded below our feet. The traces of Seneca Village, the traces of this African American settlement in what was then a rural area north of New York City, what is now Central Park, is just a few feet below the soil. This had been a farm that was parceled out soon after the Commissioner's Plan, what is known as the Grid Plan of New York, was laid out. Individual parcels for individual houses were set out for sale.
Those parcels were sold in some cases to African Americans. There were a lot of landowners in the city who would not sell land to African Americans, so this provided an enormous opportunity.
The purchase of land not only bought you a piece of property, one also was purchasing the right to vote.
There was an amendment to the New York State Constitution that said that if you were an African American male, you would be able to vote if you owned $250 or more property, and if you had resided in New York for more than 3 years.
And of course, you had to be male.
And we also think that it was a black middle class community.
We know, for example, that skilled tradesmen worked here. We've identified one of the inhabitants as a cooper, that is, as a man who made barrels.
To be a member of the Euro-American middle class, one had to have a job which did not involve manual labor. That was not true for African Americans because African Americans were discriminated against to such an extent that they didn't have that possibility.
And so perhaps there was another value in having a village that was at some distance from the settled area lower on Manhattan Island.
The village allowed the Seneca villagers to have a controlled, peaceful community of their own away from that harassment.
And it wasn't just homes. There were numerous churches, there was at least one school, and several graveyards. This was a true community. By the mid-century, the increasing density of the urban population in lower Manhattan had propelled this idea that New York, in order to become one of the great cities of the world, should have a public park. The problem was there were people living in the area where the park was to be built, including Seneca Village. And so the state of New York used its legal power, its powers of eminent domain, to condemn the properties within the boundaries of the park and to evict the residents.
And they did that with the idea of creating something for the greater good. But of course, for the people who were evicted, it was completely tragic. And coincidentally, at the time, was a moment when there was a horrible economic depression in New York. It was a very hard time to lose your home and to have to start over again.
We know from census records that there were more than 250 people that lived in Seneca Village at its height. And this included not only African Americans, but also European immigrants.
At the time that everybody had to move, 2/3 of the population was African American, but 1/3 of it was of European descent, mostly Irish.
And this makes sense because...
And you know, for the most part, those black Irish, man. It's the immigrants, man. Okay?
This is in the years immediately after the potato famine and the great wave of immigrants that left Ireland for the U.S. What I find most troubling is that the very memory of the village was virtually lost.
Until the very late 1980s and early 1990s, Seneca Village was gone from popular memory.
So it's only towards the end of the 20th century that the memory of Seneca Village is resurrected. And thanks to the field work that you and your team undertook, we can much more accurately locate that history in place and with artifacts.
The artifacts that we found are really important because we can imagine the people of Seneca Village having their meals. We can look at their dishes and see that they were similar in terms of their patterns to people of European descent and how they were different.
So by locating the foundations of the homes, of the churches, of the remains of the graveyards, by locating some of the artifacts, these allow us to reinsert this important chapter of American history back into our cultural consciousness.
To make African Americans part of the larger narrative of American history.
That was all Jake, man. Okay? That was those black Irish, those so-called Negroes, man. Latinos too, man. Okay, Native Americans. I got these other clips, man. All these popped up, man, in my timeline when I was doing some other research, looking at some other things, man. And this popped up, man. This is the spirit of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, man. Because I never knew nothing about Seneca Village, man. Which is today Central Park, man.
Seneca Village was a community of African American, Irish, and German immigrants that
See?
existed in the 19th century in an area that...
That's Jake, man. Okay? We was all in Germany, man. Europe, man. We took over all that, man. That was Jake, man.
Was known as the Pre-Park area. It was roughly between 82nd and 89th Streets, between 7th and 8th Avenues in New York City. There were about 300 people that lived in the community, particularly towards the end and towards its demise. And we've been on this mission to find descendants to help tell this story.
This Jake, man.
Andrew Williams was one of a number of African Americans who were free, and in 1825, Andrew Williams purchased land in Seneca Village for $120, which was a lot of money then.
Andrew Williams was one of the early settlers of Seneca Village. He was there in the very beginning and he was there at the very end. He was a bootblack. He shined shoes for a living. Later, he was a cartman. And he was someone that we were really, really interested in and really wanted to try to make connections.
I've been able to find 4 generations, and one of the descendants is Andrew Williams' great-great-great-great-granddaughter, 4th great-granddaughter, Ariel Williams.
Cal Jones reached out, and I remember that first week of us connecting, we had so many calls and try to help him connect all these missing puzzle pieces and connect my entire family back to Seneca Village.
And she is like the family historian, and she gave me some understanding of everyone in the family. All the men were named Andrew Williams.
So the name Andrew Williams continually gets carried over throughout the entire family, and the only variation is the middle name changes. It's absolutely crazy that they all look alike, and the name is still carried out to this day, and my brother also being named Andrew Williams.
And the women had started with A, rhyming and being as close to Andrew as possible, right down to Ariel. So it showed a lot of family pride. Andrew Williams was not a formally educated man, but he was a sharp man. You could see it in the moves that he made. He immediately protested about the takeover, first of all, but it seemed as though he felt his property was worth about $4,000.
As the records show, Andrew Williams was offered an amount for his space in Central Park to get him out, and he responded to that request with a counter stating, I should be at least given this much money. Unfortunately, that was not an agreement that was made, and they were actually given way less money and forced to leave the park.
So he did the protest, but of course it didn't matter. It didn't work. Then they took the property. He got paid $2,335 in April of '56. And by June of '56, he had purchased land in Newtown. So here's a man that he didn't waste any time.
Through kind of my studies and my understanding of the Williams family from all the research that I've done, we were very resourceful people. And with this new land, he was able to really start to invest in Andrew Williams #2's education. He was the first one that was able to read and write, invest in other different things as well, and continue to be a property owner. And so after Andrew Williams #2, Andrew Williams #3 was a very educated person, a musician as well, and actually traveled the world and attended what is now Columbia's music school today. And he had a son. They moved to California. My grandfather started a security business that my father worked with him on, and they're both in law enforcement, and we kind of grew up in California the rest of our lives.
What is really meaningful is to find a family in a time when it was very difficult for blacks to survive, let alone free. And to see someone who was taking care of a family, working and saving his money, and always showing a sense of family.
Being in the park where Andrew Williams' house was located was really a little bit overwhelming in a good way, and that so many people would be interested in learning more about my story and about my family and our involvement with Seneca Village and where we went after that and what happened after that.
What Seneca Village has put in the focus for me is the importance of history.
History is just absolutely the center of everything that we do. It can have a profound effect on who we are as people.
Now I feel very connected to not only my father, but my family. I understand the pride behind my name and understand where I came from and the traits that I took from those people and why my father was the way he is and why I am the way I am today.
History is great. You have to know your history. You should know where you came from to know where you're going.
Hey, and the apostles and the elders always tell us that, man. You gotta know history, man. You have to know history, man. Hey, this is beautiful, man. We in beautiful times, man. All the things that's unfolding in Babylon the Great and around the world with the famines and pestilence and wars and rumors of wars, man. Hey, he's unfolding. The Lord is letting loose all the secret things, man. The mysteries that have been hid from ages, man. Along with this history, man.
When we look at what it takes to be an American, I think you find no better example than right here in New York with its own free black communities, in which they defined what it meant to be an American, even when the law and the government did not see them as such. One of the first free black communities in New York is Seneca Village. Founded in 1825, and that of course is pre-emancipation when we're talking about New York specifically. Slavery ends in New York in 1827.
So a group of African Americans who were affiliated with the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, they were the first to buy property in this area that became known as Seneca Village.
Daily life in Seneca Village would have been impacted by racial violence on a daily basis. They lived in an integrated community, so while it was a free black community, they had among them Irish neighbors and some German neighbors too, and they intentionally placed themselves there.
Seneca Village comprised approximately 70 buildings. There was 3 churches. The first church to be created was the African Union Church. This church also did have a school, and it was one of the few schools that was available for African American students. So it helps us understand Seneca Village as a place where community and church and education was very important.
I would say one of the more famous residents, if you will, was Albro Lyons. He actually lived in Lower Manhattan during the draft riots. And his daughter, Maritcha, who was a teenager at the time, she's the one who left her memoirs and really explained the horror that happened in Manhattan streets during the summer of 1863, when African Americans were basically being tortured and murdered by their fellow New Yorkers. In 1855, when the city starts thinking about a public space that will be called Central Park, they decide that Seneca Village has no value and said we would have more value if we became a public space, and we will call that public space Central Park. Of course, it really had nothing to do with that community or upholding what that community stood for.
You know, it was about 800 acres of land, and while it was not the first example of the use of eminent domain, it was certainly a prominent example. But it is certain that, you know, the creation of the park did really disrupt the development of what was one of the city's most important African American communities.
Within 30 years, Seneca Village is basically established, thrives, and evaporates completely.
So there are not a lot of physical traces of Seneca Village in the landscape. Since about 1997, a group of historians and archaeologists have been studying Seneca Village.
images and illustrations, and we found a map that actually had the names of individuals that we didn't know was in our collection, that helped us to understand, oh, this is why these people are there. And then from there, those names on the map, we could connect to the census records, and then we could find out for sure that these were actually black folk and white folk, and they actually owned their property. They weren't squatters, and so it was just telling a different kind of story.
They found such magical things that I think tell a story of a really dignified, thriving African American community. It's through their efforts that we know so much more about Seneca Village.
We collected these things and we tried to interpret them to see if they dated to the period of Seneca Village, and so they did. And you look at the newspapers, you look at the maps, you look at the title deeds, you look at family papers, and you just kind of piece that together like, okay, so this is telling an interesting story. How can we bolster this story? How can we humanize it a little bit more?
There's no descendants that have been found from Seneca Village, and it's not from lack of trying. My suspicion is to do with the amount of time that Seneca Village existed for. It existed through to 1855, 57.
And you see, there was some descendants. The last video I just showed you from Andrew Williams' line, you had the young Jake female that's still living, man. The great granddaughter of Andrew Williams, man. You see? History, man. Facts.
For whatever reason, like so many things in history, we lose them to the archives, but not for lack of trying.
Why? Because they covet, man. They covet fields, man, and take them by violence, man.
Search, we're on a hunt to try to find direct descendants who are connected to the story, because again, it's just one of those things that will humanize and, you know, put a nice punctuation mark, an exclamation at the end of the story.
If you look at the history and the rediscovery of Seneca Village, there is a pattern here, and the pattern is this: the city always erases history. That's what it does. It does so in the name of New York, in the name of progress. But I think it's really important that ordinary people, ordinary New Yorkers, ordinary Americans understand that it's always been other ordinary Americans who have preserved their own communities, even if it means forgetting about that community and then rediscovering them again decades later.
Facts, man. Rediscovering them decades later, man. I got a couple more short clips, 1 minute, some change, and I'm going to get these precepts, man.
We were fortunate, I think, in 2011, and the archaeologists and anthropologists.
This video is called Rediscovering Seneca Village, the place, the people, the artifacts. As a matter of fact, let me go back. This one is titled, Before Central Park, There Was Seneca Village, Secrets of the Dead. This one is titled, Seneca Village, The Williams Family Legacy. This one is titled, Seneca Village, African Americans in Early New York, man. Okay?
Archaeologists have just about done their work when it turned to, hey, whatever happened to the people that lived there? You know, and it was thought that we should try to find them. Andrew Williams was one of a number, I guess, of African Americans who were free, and in 1825, Andrew Williams purchased land in Seneca Village, which is now where Central Park is, for $120, which was a lot of money then. I've been researching the family now for a little over a year and a half, and been able to find 4 generations. And one of the descendants, Andrew Williams' great-great-great-granddaughter, the 4th great-granddaughter, Ariel.
And this is November the 27th, 2019, man.
Williams, and I went and sent her an email, and lo and behold, she said yes, she was a descendant of Andrew Williams, And she is like the family historian. She had enough facts so that when we came together, we were really able to find the family and put it all together. What Seneca Village has put in the focus for me is the importance of history and of the movement of people, not just African Americans, of people through Manhattan. History is great. You have to know your history. You should know where you came from to know where you're going.
It's facts, man. And this is another shocker. This is the last clip, and we're gonna get the precept. This is another shocker, man. Look at this, man.
How can you loan someone a piece of who they are?
This one is titled Stolen Piece of History Returned to Seneca Nation.
How can a reminder of one's central identity be given to them temporarily?
In March of last year, 7 Eyewitness News reported on the efforts of the Seneca Nation to permanently keep a part of their culture that was recovered and on loan to them from the New York State Museum.
It almost feels like a relative that, come home, or a leader that come home.
Thursday afternoon, it became official. The New York State Museum permanently transferred ownership of the corn planter pipe tomahawk back to the Seneca Nation.
Now, this was January the 9th, 2020, man. Okay? The first month of this year, so-called first month of this year. January the 9th, 2020, man.
Tomahawk corn planter defended our sovereignty. He was one of our most respected leaders, and it was a gift to him from President Washington.
This tomahawk was given to revered Seneca Nation leader, Chief Corn Planter, by President George Washington in 1792. It was a step towards the signing of the Treaty of Canandaigua. That treaty would eventually recognize the sovereignty of the Seneca Nation.
Now, we know about the treaty, okay? Hey, we know what the tomahawk did, man. Real quick, Psalms. They talking about that treaty that they break. This is Psalms 55 in verse 20. He had put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He have broken his covenant. They break it, man. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords.
The tomahawk was a powerful assertion of sovereignty when it was held in restraint. And that's why we have a blade at the bottom and a bowl at top. The bowl is for peace.
For over 7 decades, it's been missing. First stolen, then in the possession of the New York State Museum. Its president says returning this to the Seneca Nation was the right thing to do.
I believe, as do my colleagues, that while it's important to collect, it's just as important to place artifacts, both sacred and historic, in the care of those who rightfully own them.
A 228-year-old gift will now remain among the artifacts here at the Seneca Iroquois National Museum. They say it will forever remain in Seneca Nation ownership. Madison Carter, 7 Eyewitness News.
You see this, man? This is the Lord, man. This is Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shah, man. Restoring. This is going on, man. The restoration of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian, and Haitians, man. This is Psalms chapter 2 and verse 1. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh, and against his anointed. Who are the anointed ones? You Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indian, Haitians, man. Saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us, man. You got today Central Park, which was called Seneca Village, man. And it was full of so-called Negroes, Black Irish, and Germans, man. Which then was Jake, man. Israelites, man. just like Tulsa, Oklahoma, man. This is Micah chapter 2 and verse 2. It reads, verse 1, woe to him that devises iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. And they, who? The Idumeans, man. They covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, against this family do I devise an evil, from which ye shall not remove your necks, neither shall ye go haughtily, for this time is evil. In that day shall one take up a parable against you, and lament in a doleful lamentation, and say, we be utterly spoiled. He have changed the portion of my people. How have he removed it from me? Turning away, he have divided our fields, man. This is what they do, man. Habakkuk 2 and 5. Woe to him. Salakia. Habakkuk 2 and 5. Yeah, also because he transgressed by wine. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. Who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gather unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not all these take a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long unto him that laden himself with thick clay? That's why you're in debt now, man. The Lord said that's why you're in debt now, because of the wickedness you have done. You have heaped treasure for the last days, man. You came over here, raped, robbed, murdered, pillaged, plundered the North American Indians, the so-called Mexicans, and you departed their lands, man. You Indian killers. You savage killers. So-called, man. Verse 8. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and all that dwell therein. Woe to him that coveted an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. You will not be delivered, man. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and hast sinned against thy soul. Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood, and established a city by iniquity. Gentrification, man. Redlining, man. You move these people out of their homes, man. What does Proverbs 94 say, man? Salakia. Psalms 94. With the Psalms 94 and verse 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? Isaiah 10 and 1. Because you set up these laws to move Jake through gentrification and redlining, man. And predatory loaning, man. Hey, you stole billions from Jake through predatory lending, man. Billions, man. You stole. Isaiah 10 and 1. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed. You devils did that, man. This is Proverbs 10 and 23. It reads, it is as a sport to a fool to do mischief, man. It's a sport to you devils to do mischief, man. Cause what the scriptures say? A fool have said in his heart, there is no God, man. Okay? You are children of base men, man. You are violating the earth, man. Again, Proverbs 10:23. It is as a sport to a fool to do mischief, man. But a man of understanding have wisdom. You see, we know what's going on, man. We know what's going on. Children of base men. Children of fools. Base men. Violating the earth, man. Wicked, man. Conquer the land that's not yours, man. This is Psalms. As a matter of fact, yeah, this Psalms 17 and 13. 14 is the point. Arise, O Yahweh, disappoint him. Cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. From men, which are thy hand, O Yahweh. From men of the world, which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasures. They are full of children, and leave the rest of their sustenance to their babes. The precept to that is Psalms 49:11. Because it said what? They leave the rest of their substance to their babes, man. Isaiah 49:11. The inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. You don't own no land, man. You own nothing, man. This is of Yahweh Bahashim Havashai, man. Hey, the Lord say was that Haggai, man. All the gold and the silver is the Lord's, man, and the lands thereof, man. But you call what? They call the lands after their own names. Okay, this was Seneca villages, man. Now it's called Central Park that you stole from Jake. You see? They call the lands after their own names, man. And they do what? They leave the rest of their substance to their babes, man. Like I tell you in Job 20 and 13. As a matter of fact, let's read that. Job 21 and 13. 21 and Job 21 and 9. It said, their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. So they live good, man. They live good. Hey, they leave the rest of their substance to their babes, man. This is their houses is safe, man. But you know why Jake is catching hell? Because of the curses, man. You know, it's the punishment. And we gotta deal with it. This is Job 20 and 18. It reads, that which he labored for shall he restore, and shall not swallow it down. According to his substance shall the restitution be, and he shall not rejoice therein. Because he have oppressed and have forsaken the poor, because he have violently taken away an house which he builded not. You didn't build up Seneca Village, man. You didn't build that up, man. Jake's did, man. But what did it say? He have violently taken away an house which he builded not, man. You take away and you leave your substance to your babes, man. To your children. That's what the Lord say, what? In Isaiah 14:21, prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers. Let's read that. Isaiah 14:21. Prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities, No more, man. Prepare slaughter for his children, man. Because you people today that talking about you had nothing to do with slavery, you wasn't there. You was there, man. You are your forefathers, just like we are our forefathers. You was there, and you gotta pay grievously, man. You gotta pay. I just want to warn a few precepts, man, showing you how these devils, man, these devils is prideful, man. They take that, they increase it in that which is not theirs, man. And they take away houses, man, violently. And they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage, man. And they call the lands under their own names, man. This is who we dealing with. While you Jays talking about you looking for peace and justice, man, you will never get peace here, man. You will never get justice because we are dealing with the Job 9 and 24s, man. The rulers in high places, man. The wickedness, man. Spiritual wickedness in high places, man. You will never get justice. Lord willing, this will edify. Gotta give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh. Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Rika, Quadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well. And a sincere salutation to all the ark and pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akwa who are listening and learning. The few sisters who are listening and learning. Lord's willing to edifying. Until next time, I say shalom, wa abad abad.